James Grande, welcome into the Better Baseball MLB DFS Playbook live stream here, recording. James, we're not recording, we're live. We're live here for Monday's 8-game maiden slate on the Better Sports Network and the Fantasy Alarm social channels here. James, listen, if you're listening, you're watching, tuning in, you got questions, type it in the chat. James and I are here to help you guys build your lineups, answer your betting questions, prize picks, underdog, you name it. We're here for you for the next hour, breaking down this 8-game main slate. So get in that chat. Let's get active. Let's win today, man.
Yeah, interesting slate. We have a lot of pitching talent, some not in the best spots, some are. It really falls off a cliff, I'd say, after like the 8K tier. I think we have some very interesting ownership numbers coming into a lot of teams that are like there's not like I think the takeaway from the podcast this morning, there's not like one team where it's like, I need this team today in terms of stacking. There's a bunch of teams that I think are very similar to one another. A few with like the exact same ownership projections, a few that are a little contrarian. So, interesting slate for sure. 8 games. We always talk about it right in the wheelhouse. And like John said, please ask questions. If you guys have anything you want to ask John or myself. You know, John has a big day coming up Saturday. If you want to chime in and ask John any questions about the wedding, any tips about John's day on Saturday, we do so. But your questions are here, or we're here to answer anything you guys got coming towards us.
Yes, that is 100% accurate here. James, let's get into it here. We'll talk about today's Vegas totals and game odds that we're looking at here today. Again, you mentioned it's a pretty good split of like top end pitching and some interesting matchups here to take advantage of. I think we're going to get kind of lucky with the weather. We highlighted on the podcast this morning. We were looking at that St. Louis Chicago game. There's still a lot of rain in that area, but it's expected to clear out tonight. So if they maybe have an early delay, they'll be good to go. Still have to kind of see what's going to happen there. But as we discussed, there 10 to 15 miles an hour, a wind's blowing in for that game here, so maybe a little bit more favorable for the pitching matchups there. Marcus Stroman at home against Miles Mikolas here. So, that's the one weather concern that we have here for tonight. But let's talk about Vegas odds and totals.
Yeah, so a few numbers have changed, some for the good, some for the best, some for the worst. Anthony DeSclafani now the biggest favorite on today's board, minus 225, pretty much across the industry, even a little higher on FanDuel at minus 230. They take on the Washington Nationals. We've talked a lot about DeSclafani and his, emergence back to solid pitching. I think last year he was a little unlucky. He didn't make a lot of starts, but a little unlucky when he did. Nestor Cortez odds have actually shrunk, opened at minus 212, now down to minus 195. So not like significantly different, but it is worth noting that people are a little more hesitant, I think, to get to the Yankees considering what they've looked like. And Zach Gallen minus 205 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Those are the three biggest favorites of the day. Logan Gilbert and the Seattle Mariners have jumped from minus 143 to minus 170. And I even see on Caesars minus 179. So pretty big jump there for the Seattle Mariners at home against the Texas Rangers. So that's something to monitor. When we were talking about the over-under, though, yesterday, John, there was nothing really worth noting. That hasn't really changed. We do have a game that made it to 9 over under in Houston, LA. And, for what it's worth, like that's one of the better, I guess, pitching matchups of the day. We are at 8.5 in Chicago, KC. It's 8.5 in New York and Oakland, 8.5. Like that's so one game with a 9 total. Then we have 2 7.5s. St. Louis, Chicago. So there you see the weather playing a factor in Chicago. 7.5 run total and 7.5 in Seattle, Texas as well.
Sounds good. Like that. Let's get into the slate here. Again, if you have any questions, get in the chat. We're all here. If you're in our Discord, if you're in our new Discord, get in there, answer some questions. We're in there to help you guys out here as well. If you're not yet a member of the Fantasy Alarm family, you see down at the scroll right there, you can get all pro access, which will give you access to our premium Discord channels and our MLB DFS playbook. Henry Wilson has that out already for everybody to check out there today. Promo code MLB50 when you go to fantasyfarm.com/all-pro gets you the first 6 months for 50% off. That's $19.98 a month. And now for limited time, at least, we have a 7-day free trial as well. So you go to fantasyfarm.com/all-pro. You sign up with the promo code MLB50. You get a 7-day free trial. You like it? Great. Stay with us for $20 a month all the way through that first month of the NFL season. If you don't like it, cancel. But I can't imagine you'll be doing that. You'll be hanging here with James and I. You'll be getting in that winner's circle, that trophy case Discord channel there with Chauncey, our guy, just absolutely dominating literally everything that he does, whether it's Madden Sims, NBA, he killed PGA last week, all using the content that we got here at Fantasy Alarm. So get in the Discord, sign up with Fantasy Alarm, get part of the package there, become all pro with us this week. James, we'll get into it. Pitching, Zach Allen's our top price guy. Talked about it last night on the podcast. Again, talked about it a little bit more this morning. When I looked at this slate, we give our first look impressions. I immediately went to a couple of pitchers. Zach Allen, obviously, he's a top price guy, but also for me, best matchup on the board at home. I think he's pitching the best of the top price guys there. I'm willing to lock him in a bounce back spot here against Miami.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see as things have developed. He is the third highest projected owned pitcher of the day, which I'm not surprised, I guess, to see him behind Nestor. I kind of figured naturally people would just gravitate towards Nestor Cortez
it's really any pitcher against Oakland, it seems like people just love. So
yeah, and he was at the time we were recording, he was the biggest favorite on the board, right? Mm-hmm. So everything really pointed to Nestor being popular, but like there's almost a 20% ownership discrepancy between the two. I'm going to take Zach Allen in that instance 10 out of 10 times because Nestor himself hasn't been great. I'm not saying he can't be here or he won't be here because the first 4 starts of the season, he was very solid. It's been lately, 3 home runs allowed to Texas in a game they lost 15-2. So that wasn't great. I'm okay spending $800 more to get to Gallen. I think there's not like clear-cut spend-up offenses that we need today. Like there's not the Blue Jays or where they're all 6K or near 6K that we need to get to. So I like Gallen 10-2. I like him better than the guys below him. I know we're going to talk about a couple of them. But just seeing the first thing I noticed was, wow, Nestor Cortez is almost 20% higher owned than Zach Gallen, and Gallen's just been the better pitcher from the start until now.
100% there. Let me ask you your thoughts here. You mentioned some of the changing line odds there, and then you talk about ownership and Gallen being the third highest. Everybody also in on Logan Gilbert here tonight. Yep. At home, up to -170 favorite here. Looking to see if the Rangers lineup is out. It's not out yet. Talk to me about this spot here, because I understand Logan Gilbert having a career year, 10+ K per 9, highest we've seen from him. You go look at FanGraphs, a lot of his underlying numbers are better than what he's kind of have. His expected ERA, I think, is under 3. His FIP and XFIP are in the threes here. On the flip side, though, we're looking at a Rangers team that against right-handed pitching is 5th in ISO, 5th in slugging, 5th in WOBA, 6th in average. They're 19th in strikeout rate. They're 13th in walk rate, all against right-handed pitching. So this certainly isn't like his easiest matchup on the board. What is it do you think people are seeing? Because on the flip side, Seattle's offense has been one of the worst in baseball that is moving the needle more towards Gilbert tonight.
I think it's ballpark driven as well. Just considering Seattle is a very good environment for pitchers. So ballpark being a factor is one. But and Gilbert just being good is 2, because you're right. Texas is top 6 in pretty much every statistical category, and they don't strike out. Like 22% strikeout rate against righties too, 19th in the league. So, unless we get a Texas lineup and we find out that like they're not playing regulars, like I'm okay being under the field on Logan Gilbert. I'm also like slightly indifferent. Like I could see getting to Logan Gilbert, but I think I'd rather just get the upside out of Zach Gallen because there just hasn't been that ceiling like 1 versus 1. Gallon just has the infinitely higher ceiling thus far.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm probably gonna be lower on the field than 30% Logan Gilbert. Like that just
Yeah.
feels a little too. That just feels a little too high to me.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting as well. Just looking at the matchup and trying to figure out, like, all right, who of the top guys has the easier spots? I mean, we talked a little bit and profiled Dylan Cease this morning. Maybe coming in the worst form of any of the top price guys. 4.59 ERA, 1.4 WHIP, and a lot of the underlying numbers sort of support that production as well. It's not like Gilbert where he's got a 4 ERA, but an expected ERA of 2.8. Dylan Cease is kind of pitching the way his numbers suggest that he should be pitching. He's also facing Kansas City, one of the higher strikeout rate teams in the MLB. We talk all the time. You kind of get past that 4-5 hitter, and then it's a pretty easy cakewalk there in the second half of their lineup. He's just pitching poorly. To that point, Tampa Bay, Baltimore, San Francisco, Houston, guys had a hell of a schedule that he's had to
Yeah.
throw against there as well. Where Gilbert on the flip side has faced Oakland, Chicago, Cleveland twice, right? Like Milwaukee, easier teams to kind of deal with. So if I had to pick between a Cease or a Gilbert today, I would probably actually lean Dylan Cease than Logan Gilbert, even though Cease is a little more expensive just given the matchups.
And given the fact that one was a Cy Young candidate last year, runner up, and yes, like you said, everything suggests he's pitching to what he's been this year, but he just has a better matchup, and he's half the ownership of Logan Gilbert for
Right.
just a few $100 more. The Kansas City lineup actually looks better than it has, and I think that's because Nick Prado has been hitting, so he's hitting sixth, and Michael Garcia has been a dynamite
Yeah.
call up for them, hitting seventh. So like it is slightly deeper, and a good mix of lefty righty pretty much throughout the whole lineup. So like it is in theory better, but like you mentioned, I mean Kansas City was 26th in OPS against righties. They have a 25% strikeout rate. I still stand by my take on Cease. Like he is a good tournament play. He's been really popular each of the last two starts. Recency bias can giveth and recency bias can taketh away, John,
Yep.
because now we're getting a Cease that is basically the same price that people don't want to pay for and no one's playing.
Right.
So in a tournament, he's a very good pivot off of Chalky Nestor, Chalky Gilbert, and I'm not saying he's the best pivot off Gallon, but
Yeah.
he is also going to be like
Right. And while his strikeout numbers aren't like eye popping in terms of total, still almost an 11K per nine. The problem is he's not pitching deep enough in the
right,
games, but he's giving you over a strikeout per inning, a 26% strikeout rate for him this season. And you're right. Listen, there are certainly some guys in that Royals lineup that are starting to hit better, but they also have a guy like MJ Melendez hitting under 200 as their cleanup.
right,
There are guys that are hitting well above their means right now. You mentioned Garcia there. Garcia's got a 3% strikeout rate, but he's got a 25% strikeout rate, for his minor league career, something like
right.
that. Like there are guys here in that lineup that are certainly hitting above their means, and yeah, you hit the right spot today where Dylan Cease looks like he's rolling through this lineup, against a Royals team that's got a 25% strikeout rate against righties on the year, and maybe you find yourself here sitting a little prettier. So I don't mind that as the top. We haven't mentioned Hunter Brown here. He's $9,200. He's going up against the Angels. Some good starts for sure this year. A couple of rough outings against San Francisco and Atlanta. Really the only damage done. Any interest in the rookie here against the Angels?
Um, he's fine.
He
I
feels like the
mean,
forgotten man on this tier, right? Like,
I think it was the same thing last slate too, where he was like just kind of a part of it, and unfortunately, like the Angels don't strike out a lot. He just feels like a guy that has ceiling. Sure, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. It's like he doesn't give up home runs. That's what we're gonna play Angels for, right? Like Otani, Trout,
Yeah, he had given
Renfro.
up
Like
one, I think, going into his last start, right, and didn't give up any, right? So,
I don't
or
think
he's still
he's given
actually a
up.
lot. He's
No,
given up
yeah,
none.
he has not given
Still
up a
giving up
home
none.
run.
Still giving up no
Everything
home
is on
runs.
the ground.
Yep.
Everything that Hunter Brown does is on the ground. So like, I mean, he has 3 fly ball outs in his last 2 starts. Like that is insane.
Yeah, and he's another guy that's not getting unlucky, right? They
Yeah,
have a 3.02 BABIP against them. His ERA is 2.6. His FIP is 2.83. 9.3 K per nine. His walks are a little bit too much. Almost a 4K walk per nine is not going to do you any good. But we also talk about the Angels lineup a little bit, and we like some guys in those lineups in certain
right.
matchups, but righties aren't generally where we look to play a Renfro, a Drury, a Rendon. So as always, if you can navigate your way through Otani and Trout, which is a big ask for a lot of pitchers, you certainly can move your way through this Angels lineup today.
Agreed.
And I'm looking at him in single-digit rostership percentage today. So, I think there's some potential viability here in Hunter Brown.
Sure. I think people are staying away probably just because what you just mentioned, navigating the waters of Trout, Otani.
Sure. Mid-tier here. The other guy I mentioned right away, and you talked about it in terms of line movement here, Desclafani. He's $8,100 at home, going up against Washington. Washington isn't going to strike out. We know that, but when you look at their numbers against right-handed pitching, they're just dreadful. Desclafani is also pitching some of the best baseball we've seen out of him in some time here. So mid-tier, $8,100. It just felt like a very easy SB2 to put in your lineup today.
Yeah, I find it incredibly interesting that he's not going to be owned. I understand he's not like the biggest strikeout guy. There's sometimes we've seen like some cap on his pitches, but not 109 and 96 his last 2
Right.
outings, both wins. Now he's pitching at home, not even in Washington. Like we're getting a great matchup in San Francisco. It's like it couldn't be better. So
Yeah.
I love Anthony Disclafani here. I think I just can't believe the ownership. I'm gonna
It's all strikeout.
smash. I know. I'm just. Let's say he has the same outing he does, and obviously that's not feasible, like of a prediction. Let's say he has another 8 inning, 3 strikeouts, scoreless game with a win. Are you? I mean, are you? I'm playing him. 26 fantasy points. Like
Well, look what he did his first start against the White Sox. 6 innings, 3 hits allowed, shutout, 4 strikeouts, almost 24 fantasy points.
it's hard to predict those, but like pretty good.
But that's like we're talking about a team that against right-handed pitching on the season, they rank 26th in WOBA. ISO, they're dead last in ISO. They are, let's see, second to last in slugging. In terms of batting average, they have
26 and 26 and OPS.
Yeah, 26 in OPS. They're 18th in batting average, but it's just 238. They don't strike out. We talked about that. They're 28th in strikeout rate, just 19%, but they also don't walk. They're 28th in walk percentage. So, like, they're going to put balls in play, but they're all going to be soft contact, no power here. So if they drive the pitch count up on him a little bit and he goes 6 shutout, but he gives you a couple strikeouts and he gets you 25 fantasy points, you're not going to get complaining. So, and on the flip side, the Giants against Irvin should be in a great spot to score runs. So,
Yep.
Yeah, Desclafani to me was like my favorite, just SB2 to throw on the board. But to your point, like we go look at like the DraftKings percentages, and you're like, there's some other guys that people seem to like today for one reason or another.
Yeah, Freddie Peralta being one of them, Miles Mikolas being another. I mean, the Peralta exactly what you just said. Why are people playing Freddie Peralta, John? Strikeouts. He has 18 strikeouts over his last 12 innings. He had 10 strikeouts in cores. And on DraftKings, we know like because you can lose points so easily on draft, like with the hits and the walks and everything, strikeouts are king. So I'm fine getting to Peralta. The Dodgers are obviously scary. The Mikolas thing is interesting because he has been a little better of late, but outside of a shutout against San Francisco, there's just like not a lot there. Because if he talk about someone who does not miss bats, like Miles Mikolas does not miss bats, and if he's getting constantly, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times this year, Miles Mikolas has allowed 7+ hits, and 5 times he's essentially allowed 7+ base runners in every single start he's made this year. Like, that's just too much on DraftKings. So people are chasing Mikolas because weather and wind, and I don't love that idea because the Cubs do have some pretty good thump in their offense.
I mean, Cody Bellinger looking to reclaim his MVP title. I mean, I don't know
Yeah, I
where
know.
that's coming from, but
Cubs are ninth against right-handed pitchers in OPS this year. I just don't understand the Mikolas love when like that's just I understand like there's always that one punt pitcher on every slate, right? That just gets ownership because people are just we're looking for something. It's like,
yep.
okay, what are we gonna find today? Because so we can get to Nestor and Gallon or Logan Gilbert and Gallon. Like
Mikolas was good in St. Louis last year. He was dreadful on the road. And we're sure 10 miles an hour blowing in is, I guess, if you're our YouTube commenter from this morning, considered significant. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Obviously it's better than blowing out for sure. But I mean, yeah, I don't care for it as much. We cut the clip this morning. We tweeted it out there. Everybody to see it. We both kind of agree that there's a path to this play if we're really looking to spend down, and that was JP Sears. Again, a guy that some of the underlying numbers maybe suggest that he could be pitching a little bit better than he is now. Strikeout numbers not terrible. And he's going up against the Yankees, and we know that Yankees lineup, no Aaron Judge here again today. Volpe, Torres, Rizzo, LeMahieu, and then it's Bader, Kiner, Falafa, Cabrera, Trevino, and Hicks, right? Like a pretty easy, seemingly easy second half of that lineup here for Sears. A lot of righties. He's only getting one lefty in the lineup, so maybe that definitely contributes a little bit. This could just be a spot where it's like, okay, he's got a 5.06 ERA. He's not pitching well. It's Oakland. Everybody's in on Nestor. So, like, why would you pitch JP Sears? But we talked about it. At least 6 innings in 3 of his last 4 starts. The strikeouts have been there. At his price point, you don't need him to dominate. If he goes 6 innings, 3 earned runs with like 7 strikeouts, he's good start. So, and he has that strikeout upside, right? Like some of these other, like, I know Mikolas is actually striking out more than he has really in years past, but the Yankees here, I think, are in a spot where we could take advantage of them for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Yankees have been very bad this year offensively. And against lefties, 22nd in OPS, right around that same mark, 21st in terms of WOBA. They're not striking out a ton, 21%, but JP Sears, 26% strikeout rate this year. You mentioned all those righties. So here's what gives, right, John? These are JP Sears numbers against righties this year, okay? 314 WOBA, that's very solid. Like, that's advantage Sears. 263 ISO, that's very scary.
Power.
Pair that with a 61% fly ball rate against righties in Yankee Stadium could be a factor, but 31% K rate. So all of his strikeouts come, like, only a 7% K rate against lefties. All of his strikeouts coming against righties. What gives? Like,
well, the other thing we talk about with Yankee Stadium is that the reason they like lefty power in their bat is because of how short
porch
right field is. Well, you have a lefty pitching away from that short porch. You have a bunch of righties that are power alley to actually one of the deeper deeper left centers, I think it was in baseball. So listen, the power alley for righties definitely is not fit to Yankee Stadium. So we'll see. Again, that's a total dart throw. I personally am more so going a Gallon with a Desclafani or a double spend up. I'm not looking to dive all the way down there. But if I'm making 10 lineups today, 5 lineups today, maybe I got 1 Sears in there. But I'm not living in the value plays for pitching today. I'm looking mid-tier and higher.
Yeah, I'd rather, and I've kind of said this the whole stream so far about pitchers, but like, I'd rather take a dart on a 1% Sears than a 15% Mikolas because, I mean, like, Mikolas, we see Sears missing bats, almost 10 K per 9, the 30% K rate against righties. Mikolas just doesn't. Like, he doesn't. He doesn't miss bats.
Yep, I'm 100% with you there. All right, let's go on over to the catcher because I don't think we're looking at Garrett, Greinke, or Irvin here, right? So,
no.
Only to stack against. So, catcher position here. If you're not in on Dylan Cease, obviously Salvi Perez right now,
Rolling.
Just monster, right?
Yep.
421, 1293, 5 homers the last 10, 7 on the season. The man is heating up big time. We know the power is there. We talk about the weather in Kansas City. You know, it's getting warmer. The ball tends to fly out there a little bit more. So definitely a guy that we're looking at today if you're looking to spend up. If you're not looking to spend up, if we're looking mid-tier in value, who's your go-to catcher for tonight?
It's probably Gabriel Moreno, 3,400 against Braxton Garrett. Moreno really hasn't flashed like any power. It's really just been singles and RBIs. Like that's what we've kind of lived off. I
15
don't.
RBI, man, that's great.
Yeah, it's very good, especially after how slow of a start he was off to. So I like Moreno. If you're not in on Nestor, like Shea Langoliers hitting in the middle of that lineup, look, there is a lot of like not great things about Nestor this year, and against right-handed hitters this year. 347 WOBA, and this is largely due to the Texas start. I get it, but 347 WOBA, 235 ISO, a 66% fly ball rate, and a 38% hard hit rate. Like you cannot live with a 66% fly ball rate like anywhere.
Right.
Anywhere. Like unless you're pitching in Seattle or Oakland. Well, this game's being played at Yankee Stadium. So either catcher that
I
the
was gonna say, do
Oakland.
you like Langoliers? Because min price hitting second is Carlos Perez tonight for Oakland as well.
Yeah. I don't dislike either of them, honestly. Perez is a fine punt. Like Langoliers is the better prospect of the two. So
It's weird
like
that Carlos Perez is hitting second. I don't really understand that lineup move, but
well, they've been hitting Noda second, lefty, so they like move Noda out of that spot. But I agree, like just hit Langoliers there, right? Like that's
I'm okay taking a 0 at my 2K catcher spot. So
yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. I do think that there is more upside for Langoliers, like just
sure.
because
Oh yeah,
he
yeah,
just
100%.
has a lot of power. I mean, so he hasn't done it against lefties this year, which is a little scary, and that's probably why he's not hitting sixth. It's primarily been against right-handed pitching, but I can get behind some. I can get behind some Carlos Perez also.
Okay. Anybody else?
Um,
We like Cal Raleigh tonight. Is this the right split for him?
yes, this is the right split for him.
I gotta get like a sticky note on my computer. It's like Kyle Raleigh against righties is the power versus lefties is the average. I always
Let's see
forget.
what it is this year. So he no BVP that we care about. 5 home runs. How many home runs has he hit this year? 5.
5. Yeah.
Yep, all 5 have come against right-handed pitching.
Okay. And actually everything better against right-handed pitching. 222 average is actually good for him. 434 slug, 747 OPS. So listen, we talked about John Gray's not striking anybody out.
Lefties killing. Lefties are killing him.
Yeah. Are they? What's the lefty splits?
322 average, 970 OPS, 411 WOBA.
Yeah, I kind of
Killing
like
him.
that. Kind of like that Cal Raleigh spot. I'll tell you that much.
You could do a nice mini stack with Kelnick too.
Yeah.
Which because they I think the one thing the Seattle offense lacks is lefties. Because it's like I think they expected more probably from Colton Wong. He's been a 0.
Yeah.
JP Crawford's been a 0. Sorry, John. I know that hurts. Taylor Trammell is okay. Like he's been okay since, but so you could do like a Seattle lefty stack if you wanted.
Yeah.
But yeah, Raleigh works.
Yeah, no, I think for me, my catchers, if for lineups where I'm not playing Cease, obviously I do like the Salvi, but that mid tier of Cal Raleigh, Gabriel Moreno, and Carlos Perez is just the pure punt play for
Yep.
me. I think is catcher. First base position, Paul Goldschmidt was the top in the playbook yesterday. Homered 3 times. Do you chase the home run here against a pure ground ball pitcher in Stroman?
No.
Okay. I don't disagree. Just getting your
You can. You obviously can. You obviously can. I mean,
a lot of people will look at 3 home runs and be like, he's hot. He kind of is. 7 hits over the last 3 games, but
Yep.
very difficult against an extreme ground ball pitcher in Stroman there. So talk to me then. The obvious play for us last night was Christian Walker at $4,300. Is it still Christian Walker here? Or have you keyed in on anybody else?
It's still Christian Walker. I do think I've gained a little love for Rowdy Tellez, who's priced in the
Okay.
same 285 ISO against righties. We know the power pedigree there, so the 285 ISO probably doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. 342 WOBA. I like Gonsolin. You know, lefties. It's a very small sample, right? Just 18 at bats. But 214 ISO against them, 421 WOBA. Like if he's gonna struggle this year against lefties, like Tellez could. And I don't want to stack Brewers. But if I'm playing a one-off, I think Browdy could be
Too
a
much
home
pain
run.
for you?
Yeah, definitely too much pain. So much pain. And there's like if I wanted to play Tellez Adames, they're just so expensive for no like that stack is so expensive for no reason, considering like one and a half of that stack has been pretty bad for an entire year.
Mm-hmm.
So I like Tellez as a one-off for home runs, but Christian Walker is our guy for sure.
Yeah, 100% there. Mid-tier plays. With the ownership that Gilbert's getting, wouldn't it make sense to play a little Rangers just to, be different here?
What like Nathaniel Lowe is just like very frustrating this year because there's just been no power. Like
Right.
we're coming off a year where he hits I think 29 home runs or he approached 30 home runs last year. We finally got like the power, and now he has a 29% ground or fly ball rate against righties, like not lifting the ball at all.
He is heating up a bit. No real power, but RBIs have been pretty strong for him. Last 10 games, 7 RBIs. He's got more walks than strikeouts, but just 3 extra base hits during that span. But he has half of his season total in RBI. Almost a third of his season total in RBI just in the last 10 games here. 429 slug, 860. Again, I'm only mentioning it because of we were
The
looking at
ownership.
40% rostership there on Logan Gilbert tonight, and we talked about it. Texas ranking top 5 basically in the majority of offensive categories here. So just as a contrarian play against Gilbert, if Gilbert does suck, you're probably getting. It's like when I played Baltimore the other day against Max Fried.
Right.
I had Baltimore at 1% up and down the lineup. We had a couple of good hits there. Santander obviously at 1.8% came through. So something like that's probably what you're looking for with Texas tonight, right? If so many people are playing Gilbert, nobody is on the Rangers.
Yeah, and sometimes in those situations, like if you had just played Santander, right, or if we just play, and obviously that hindsight, like you should have just played the one guy, like that's, but like you don't need to stack. So if you wanted to play like a Nate Lowe as a one-off, I'm perfect, or Nathaniel, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that as well.
I'll say the other thing we discovered the other day when we were stacking Texas, because we played a lot of like Josh Jung and Ezekiel Duran and Robbie Grossman because they were up against lefties. We didn't play Semien or we didn't play Adolis Garcia because their better splits this year were actually against right-handed pitching. Those two guys couldn't hit left-handed pitching to save their life this season. Now they got a righty, so you can kind of put those big bats back in your stack. So you get a Semien today and Adolis at 5%, 3%. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm a long-winded way to say like one of my 3 lineups tonight I'm going to send you later on today. Most likely going to include some Texas Rangers here. So moving on down. We're big Vinny Pasquantino fans here. If you're not in on Dylan Cease tonight, Vinny Pass at 3,700 definitely will find a way into some lineups here. Lamonte Wade's your home run call, I think, or down to this value tier, $3,200, lefty versus righty spot for him. He'll hit a good part of the lineup. A lot of power from Lamonte Wade, and he's also hitting decently. 324 the last 10 games, 1230 OPS, 765 slug. I know some of that had to do with that Mexico City game, but even lately, still getting on base.
Yeah, San Francisco is really interesting tonight, because they are one of the highest projected teams tonight. They have the highest implied total on the board, yet they're at home, which is obviously advantage pitchers. Jake Irvin struggled. We know Washington's bullpen kind of stinks. Like struggled throwing strikes, I should say.
Sure.
I don't know what to make of them because I don't love the environment. Like I just don't like stacking them at high ownership at home. Um, but it's an interesting approach, and I like Lamonte Wade being multi-position eligible here. I like the guy right below him probably a little bit more because I like the White Sox a bit,
Mhm.
and I like the guy at the same price tag as Andrew Vaughn too. Like
I thought you were
Vaughn,
going with Emmanuel Rivera there, not Vaughn, but
I
both,
like well, I
both
like
for me.
them.
Yeah.
I like both teams. Like Rivera has hit lefties since last year, extremely well. He's been hitting in a very good spot when they face lefties. I don't think the Diamondbacks lineup out yet. I assume if it is, he's going to hit second. I don't
Um,
see anything
no, not
yet.
yet. No.
Um, he's been hitting second against lefties. I love Rivera against lefties. I love the position eligibility as well. And Andrew Vaughn has been pretty good against righties. I mean, talk about Zach Greinke on the mound. Greinke himself, 179 ISO to righties. He's been really bad against the split the last few years. Vaughn this year, 175 ISO, not terrible against righties. 346 WOBA, like pretty
Yeah.
good numbers, hitting third. I like the value first base has in Vaughn and Rivera. And then you really want to get dirty, John.
You talking about Jesus Aguilar?
His numbers against left-handed pitching this year are kind of like,
Well, that's who put him on the map a couple years ago with
yep.
Milwaukee. Was an absolute killer against lefties. He is hitting 400 with an 800 slug, a 1200 OPS. 4 of his 5 homers this year have come off of left-handed pitching. So, yeah, those are definitely some good numbers. No BVP there against Nestor Cortez, but yeah, this is a spot where if you're going to play him, you're going to play him right side for the power for him there. Just ridiculous power for Jesus Aguilar. So a guy that like burst onto the scene, then got moved to Miami, almost was out of baseball, right? Like slowly found his way back, and now he's hitting cleanup for the A's today.
Well, what are you doing with Matt Mervis?
Punt play. I don't really care for the Cubs a lot tonight, but he's 2,200 hitting 7th. I'd rather play Prado at 24, hitting 6th. If I'm picking one, and listen, Mervis, we know the pedigree as a prospect for him, but not really my ideal spot for him today.
Agreed.
Second base. I mentioned Simeon. He's $6,100. It's a hard price to get to, but his numbers against right-handed pitching this year are basically the matchup that you want for him compared to when he's facing lefties on the season against right-handed pitching this season. You find Marcus Simeon out here hitting 305, 537 slug, 933 ISO. All 5 of his home runs against right-handed pitching. Not the greatest VVP, but small sample size. He's just a 1 for 14 against Logan Gilbert. Only 2 strikeouts, though. So putting the ball in play, just not getting on base. So willing to go and take a shot here on Marcus Simeon. We also know there is stolen base potential there with him as well. 4 stolen bases already on the season. So if you want to get under 1% rostership, I bet on Marcus Simeon at $6,100 here tonight. Thairo Estrada. I was gonna say Marco Estrada. Go way back in the machine. Former Red Sox, and I think great there. Our pitcher, right? I forget. Thairo Estrada here, $5,300. That's kind of the guy I was keying in on at this position. One of my favorite players. Wanted to get him in as many fantasy teams as I could this year. I only got him in a handful. Guy has just been unbelievable. Another home run last night. Back-to-back games now at home runs. He's got 6 homers on the season. He's been stealing bases. He's got 9. My favorite second baseman today.
Yeah, it might just be the best middle infield play of the day because you can play him at either position. At second, you probably starting him in at second because it's such a bad position. But yeah, I mean, not many people have as much upside as he does, and he's showing it in every facet of the game. 425 average last 10. I mean, the guy's killing it. So no problems getting to a shot. He's my favorite Giant of the day. He's a Giant I'm not like so wishy-washy on. Like the rest of them, I think Estrada is just plug and play in cash, and you can play him in tournaments as well.
Yep, I'm a full on agreement with you there as well. Mid tier guys, thoughts on some favorite targets in this range?
Um, Glaber has had good power against lefties, so that profile is very good against JP Sears. 277 ISO against left-handed pitching. So if you want to use Glaber Torres hitting second tonight, I don't hate that idea. He has been very boomer bust. Luis Arias, like he's going to probably get you 2 hits, but that's
Good single hitter. Yeah.
probably it. Like he's going to get you 2 hits. Gorman has home run upside hitting third, but he's been really slumping. It's really in this mid tier specifically, Glaber, and then it feels like the rest of the position stinks. I mean,
Well, I thought you were going to talk about our guy Dubon here. He's hitting 409 with a 930 OPS against lefties.
yeah, I mean he's good. It's just like, and I should be more like
You're always down on this guy for whatever reason. You're just like, yeah, he's fine. I'm like, he has like a 15-game hitting streak. Yeah, he's okay.
it's, and he did like have the few games this year where he stole a base, and that was great, and we got like upside. It was just better when it was in 3,600. It was better when it was 2,900 and 2,800, and like that's why I've like cooled off on Dubois. Like, yeah, 3,600. I think the Astros are pretty sneaky here, just given the ownership, and like they have a lot of good hitters, and Patrick Sandoval hasn't been all that great. So, I mean,
Houston has the
Houston's
second lowest strikeout rate against lefties this year. So
dude, they have their lineup has massive upside against left-handed pitching. They just haven't really flashed it all that much. But
yeah.
all the numbers suggest they, like last year's numbers were great. This year's numbers, eh.
We got a couple questions in here. Our guy Ryan, welcome back in. I know you're a regular for us here. Thoughts on buying low and Cease? Yeah, listen, we talked about it. When you're looking at spending up here today, we like Gallon. We were then kind of debating like Dylan Cease, Logan Gilbert. A lot of the roster ship tonight is going on Logan Gilbert, but Dylan Cease still a high strikeout guy. Better matchup for him tonight against Kansas City. If there was a spot to kind of buy in to Dylan Cease bouncing back here,
Yep.
This could be it. Dylan Cease has had some pretty tough matchups this season compared to what Logan Gilbert's had to go through. So totally fine going Dylan Cease here as a low priced, low rostered upside play there.
Agreed.
And then our guy Ice through here, Goldie Gorman mini stack. Again, our issue here with St. Louis now is just that Stroman's such a ground ball pitcher and the wind's blowing in Chicago. So yeah, it'll probably be another low roster play for you if you want to get a little different tonight. Goldie just hit 3 home runs, and he can hit the ball out of any park. It's just whether or not Stroman keeps the ball up or not. So,
yeah, Goldie has 3 home runs against Stroman, and Gorman has 2.
Yeah, so yeah, could get there. Other value plays. Anybody here for you jumping off the page?
No, I think this position stinks. Like, look, I'll say this, okay? You ready for a flashback here? Go look at Hanser Alberto and what he's done lately, John.
Oh, we used to play him against lefties all the time.
3 homers,
979 OPS. Yeah.
Was 4 for 4 with 2 doubles and a home run yesterday. Hanser Alberto in Cincinnati, I know. Second and third base eligible. I told you I like the White Sox, so shout out to Hanser. That's probably as dirty as I get.
Yesterday. That's what I want to know. Ashcraft, right? Isn't he a lefty?
Ashcraft's a righty.
Okay, maybe you got it. Let's see. Splits first for Alberto this year. Still killing. I guess still killing it. He is 3 for 5 against lefties with a home run. That's the 600 average. 219 against righties, but again, as you mentioned, Zach Greinke, gas can. So, all right, third base spot we generally spend up for, but there's not a lot to spend up for today. So, tell me where you're going.
Third base. I like Muncy in tournaments always, just given the home run. I like Bregman as a contrarian play. I will say you did a lot of when you were talking about Texas, John. I was just looking things up for Logan Gilbert. because I remember the splits being reversed last year, and
Mhm.
they were. He was a reverse splits pitcher. He struggled against righties, to your point. So 178 ISO, 324 WOBA for right-handed bats against Logan Gilbert last year. 43% hard hit rate against Logan Gilbert last year. A lot of interesting things in play for the Rangers, top of the lineup, which brings me to Josh Jung. And I know he's been like primarily a lefty masher, but
Yeah.
4K, I think he profiles pretty good here in the middle of this lineup. If you do want to, if you are feeding into the beast that's Jon Impemba and the Texas Rangers today, Josh
I'm just trying to
Jung,
give a contrarian play that I actually will be playing myself tonight. I think that there's some merit to that purely based off if
the
a guy is
roster
going
ship
to be that highly rostered and it's not like, oh, I have to play the ace today to get the difference. Like you're playing
against Jacob DeGrom.
yeah,
Take
you're
the eight.
playing like a good lineup against a pitcher that's been okay in the right spot. Like I think there's some merit to that. That said, Josh Jung has been pretty terrible against righties. 385 slugging, 220 average,
It's the
33,
power. Yeah.
33 strikeouts, and 91 at bats against righties. So could be better.
165 ISO, 41% fly ball rate. So there is some. I'm
Yeah.
41% hard hit rate.
When we did the show this morning, I think we landed on Emmanuel Rivera as our
Yep,
third
we
baseman
did.
tonight, just
We
because
did.
we didn't care much for the position. Has anything else changed for you? Anybody else kind of popping now that we have some lineups out here?
I mean, JD Davis, I think, is in play too. If you're playing Rangers or playing Giants,
Sure.
3,700, he fits perfectly in that stack. Emmanuel Rivera for sure. Michael Garcia for the Royals kept his RBI streak alive, kept his hit streak alive. All 6 games he's played in, he has a hit. So we can play Michael Garcia at shortstop as well if you're not playing Dylan Cease, but the kid's been really good since getting called up. So those 3 guys really, you LeMahieu hitting fourth. If you are anti JP Sears in Yankee Stadium, here's the problem: the Yankees are getting so much ownership for what? Like, why?
Well, it's Sears,
Why?
dude. It's the A's. He's got a 5 ERA, and Nestor is a favorite pitcher today. So people think like they're gonna,
I know,
you
but
know,
that doesn't like.
I know.
It just doesn't like. Outside of Glaber, these numbers are terrible. Like Rizzo 148 ISO against lefties. LeMahieu has a 260 WOBA against lefties. Like I was trying to make a case for LeMahieu until I talked myself completely out of it because he's been so trash against
Yeah.
lefties. Yeah, that's it, dude. That's it.
I'm trying to look at some of these Astros numbers against lefties. I know that we think that there's some potential here, but then I clicked on Alex Bregman, and he has just been
It's been bad.
absolutely
It's
abysmal.
yeah, it's been bad.
Um,
He actually has a 0 ISO. 0. The number is 0. The
yeah,
number before -1 and after -1 and before 1, 0.
it could be better for him, for sure.
He also has a 2.5% K rate. 2.5.
Yeah, none of that is good. So Bregman's definitely out. All right, let's move on over to the shortstop position here. Again, a couple of guys we did like. Tim Anderson at the top, $5,400. Guys come back. He's starting to heat up a little bit. Fine there against Greinke. We mentioned Estrada has that dual eligibility. We know Mookie Betts is right up there at the top. Adames is home against a righty. It's the split that we like for him, but he's been dreadful. So there wasn't a lot up top that we loved. It was more so, again, kind of looking in this mid-tier range.
So I like Anderson. I think you could definitely get to him in the White Sox stack. I do like Bobby Witt heating up a little bit. 2 home runs in his last 5 games, a
2
lot of
home runs, 3
RBIs.
stolen bases is nice. Getting the
Yeah,
speed back here.
yeah, the speed coming back. Adames is a wild card, obviously. But yeah, Jeremy Pena, Anthony Volpe. I think both those guys are in pretty good spots. And then it's another position that just falls off a cliff.
It's a punt spot. I mean, we sort of joke about Nick Ahmed every now and again against lefties, but I mean, this year the numbers are definitely not panning out the way they had in
No.
years past. But he's a pretty cheap guy against a bad pitcher here. In Garrett, you mentioned Garcia. We'll see if Ezekiel Duran gets in the lineup or not. He's $2,600. There's just really not a ton down here for value plays. So you're kind of just maybe just picking a one-off and hoping it comes through for you today.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, Volpe has been bad too. Yeah, I don't like any of these value. I don't like any of the value. The
No, it's
value
fine.
play is Miguel Garcia if if you're not using him
Yeah.
at third base.
I mean, for me, you mentioned Astros here. Pena was really the one-off I was looking at.
Sure.
344 average, 688 slug, 1100 OPS against lefties. So,
Yep.
if there was a guy in the mid tier that I was like, I don't want to spend all the way up, like that was sort of my click and move play. Let's go on over to the outfield here. We do have a question. Our guy Mark Pitts in our auction league, he's the one who stole Estrada from me. Mark wants to know, is Lourdes Gurriel going to do it again tonight?
Didn't we just ask last week like what happened to the power? And then he hits 4 home runs in the last 3 games.
Yeah, and now what's he do? What does he do good at? He generally hits lefties well. And here we go, lefty on the mound.
I mean, I
$4,100 for Lourdes Gurriel.
I love Arizona against against lefties. So it's interesting. He hits lefties well. And I'm happy that you said that, like phrase it that way. He has a 372 WOBA, which is great against lefties. 0.044 ISO.
Yeah.
He has a 44 ISO.
He's just now starting to hit for power. So
right, that is fair. I'm just saying, like,
do we know if he changed his stance like Javi Baez did?
True. Javi Baez has been goated the last week.
Right?
Look, the guy's been really good. Arizona's just been very good against lefties when you look at their lineup as a whole. So, do I think he hits a home run again? No. Do I think that he's a good play? Yes.
Okay. Just to further that little point there, Arizona this year, ISO, let's see where they are. Where's their numbers against righties? 321 WOBA. That's what we're looking for. So pretty decent WOBA there against
their top 5. Their top 6 have 350 WOBAs or better against left-handed pitching. That's including Corbin. That's including Corbin Carroll, who's a lefty.
Smoking him. I mentioned that the Rangers, their top guys are actually better against right-handed pitching this year. Dolis has been no different. Of course, he had that monster game there as well. But this year against righties, 280, 559 slug, 890 OPS, 7 of his 9 homers coming against right-handed pitching there. So I don't mind it. Again, I don't think anyone's going to be playing them here tonight. Not this just sort of be like ridiculously repetitive through every position when it comes to Rangers players. But people are tuning in. People join different parts of the stream. So I don't want to mention something to not re-mention it a little bit later on here either. So I think that the Rangers are an interesting, very low rostered stack tonight for your deep tournaments, given sort of the matchup against Logan Gilbert here today. Where else are you going for top price outfielders?
I mean, if you're in on Houston being low owned with a solid total, and that game environment is the only one that's been bet up to 9 runs worth, you can play either Houston guy. I still looking at Corbin Carroll's numbers against lefties doesn't take me off Corbin Carroll. Braxton Garrett has been pretty dominant against lefties, but 143 ISO. So, 41% hard hit rate. There is some wiggle room. I like Corbin Carroll. Bellinger at 48. I like that. I like Jared Kelenic 45. Jared Kelenic, we've already talked about John Gray getting crushed against lefties. Yeah. Kelenic once again hitting 3rd here. So like no one really at the top for me. I think it's like just getting to this next tier in like Bellinger, Kelenic. I do like Nootbaar leading off, but Luis Robert, 42.
Luis Robert, cover of our show today. Yep. 423, 1350 OPS, 769 slug. Finally coming around to being the player many people had hoped he would be, especially my best ball teams where I have him in like 3 of them. So need the
our auction league, same.
Auction league, yeah.
Same.
Brent Rooker hitting everybody. He's 39. Works for sure. Yep. Lourdes is there at 41.
Brent Rooker. Let me just pull up these numbers real quick for Brent Rooker. Because Nestor has not been that guy, pal, from last year. Like he has not been that same guy. Brent Rooker against lefties this year. 429 ISO, 450 WOBA, 45% fly ball rate, 64% hard hit rate.
Yeah.
64. You want
He's
a
good.
one-off? If you don't want to stack Oakland, but you want to play a one-off, Brent Rooker or Aguilar are your guys.
This guy probably gets drug tested every day.
Probably.
Right.
Probably.
Just makes sense.
Well, Ramon Laureano is his teammate.
It's true. It's true. All right. Other guys under 4K, who's sticking out to you?
Under 4K, we talked about it, and he was actually in our lineup we built. Harrison Bader, if I was to play someone from the Yankees that I'm like not semi-confident in, but like has been really, really good, it is this guy. A double away from a cycle on Sunday or on Monday, home runs in 2 of his last 3 games, 7 RBIs. He has like a 1,600 OPS or ISO against lefties, which is obviously not going to. I mean, there's obviously regression coming
games.
there.
Yeah,
5 game sample, but like he's just been a monster. He was this guy in the postseason for the Yankees last year as well. Like that was the first time we got to see Harrison Bader even play. So I like Harrison Bader quite a bit. 35. The the Giants guys are all interesting. Like they're all here. They're literally all priced at this same tier.
You can fit a lot of Giants in, which again we talked about it.
Yep.
Weird that they're all so cheap, right? Like they're just
also cheap, and they're the team with the highest implied total. So like, how much Giants exposure do you actually want?
You can spend up for Estrada and then get everybody else for under 4K.
Yep.
So all plays there. Story's leading off. He's 31. Benintendi's hitting second. I know you hate him, but he is hitting second.
He is such a. I'm so happy for his 18 fantasy points yesterday. Let's see how many times he's done it this year.
Winker's hitting second tonight, $2,900. Tramel's 26. Gavin Sheets homered the other day. He's hitting fifth today.
Fifth, John.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Just saying like some that.
Power. Just saying, where's Janikowski? Do we pass him already? Do we not even hit him yet? Is it day-to-day projected? So he's 3,200. Projected lineup has him potentially playing today, but he was removed yesterday with a hamstring tightness. So maybe he doesn't. Maybe we get Grossman. Yeah, this is a projected lineup based off the usual splits. Okay. Lefty versus righty generally has him in second, but maybe they move Grossman up there tonight. Anybody else?
We could play Prado here. Oswaldo Cabrera is better. I will say this for the Yankees. He is better from the right side of the plate. So you have that split advantage. Taylor Trammell, I mentioned, hitting 9th. Has 2 home runs in the first 7 games or so. Like, guy is all like boomer bust. I mean, has been good at getting on base too. 421 OBP. So if you do believe the lefties against John Gray, I can get that.
Right, let's build our lineup. We're going Gallen and I imagine Desclafani, or did you want to go try a Cease lineup?
Nope.
Catcher. Raleigh, Moreno? Or Fred?
Probably Raleigh, because I think the upside hitting 5th is probably greater, but 4,100 doesn't feel great for a catcher. Let's build with Raleigh and see where we end up.
Okay. First base, we liked Walker here.
Yep.
Just skipping quickly to third, we were going to play Manuel Rivera. $3,100. So we got 4K at play, second short, and 3 outfielders. Second, we liked Estrada,
and then probably Michael Garcia at shortstop if we're gonna punt. Sure. Unless you wanted to play Jeremy Pena 45. There's some cheap outfielders.
If we do Pena, that gets us 34 a play. Can we fit like Wade out there? Wade's 32.
Wade, Bader, and what do we have left? $3,700.
We couldn't get Robert though. So
yeah, that's true. Well, if you play Luis Robert, if you take Bader out, what do we sit with Luis Robert?
We got 3K.
Gavin Sheets, 2,500.
Love it. Let's do it. There you go. So we got a 4-5 hitter here again for Chicago against Greinke. Gallen, Desclafani, Raleigh, Walker, Estrada, Rivera, Pena, Wade, Roberts, and Sheets. We'll keep talking about some lineups in the Discord. Again, sign up below, fantasylineup.com/allpro, promo code MLB50. You got a 7-day free trial involved in that as well. 50% off the first 6 months, just $19.98 a month for the first 6 months. James and I will be back here tomorrow podcast in the morning, live stream later on in the evening to update you with everything that's going on. Again, get us on Twitter, get us in the Discord. We will talk